The roses were perfect. That's what kills me now. How absolutely perfect those white roses were, their petals catching the late afternoon light as I stood in the church vestibule, trying to breathe through the corseted bodice that suddenly felt 2 sizes too small. "You look beautiful, honey." Charlotte adjusted my veil, her weathered hands gentle against my cheek. For a moment, I let myself believe her, let myself forget the whispers I'd overheard at the rehearsal dinner. "Did you hear Stacy picked the same wedding colors as Meredith? As if she could pull it off the same way." I forced a smile, gripping my bouquet tighter. The thorns had been carefully stripped, but I could still feel phantom pricks against my palms. "Is Mom still fussing over Meredith's maid of honor dress?" Charlotte's eyes softened with understanding. "Don't let it get to you. This is your day. My day. Right." I'd been repeating those words like a mantra since Xavier proposed, trying to convince myself that for once, just once, I could be the center of my mother's attention. That she'd look at me the way she looked at my sister, like I was something precious, something worth protecting. The wedding march started, and my stomach lurched. Through the heavy wooden doors, I could see the guests rising, Xavier's steady smile at the altar, and my mother's critical gaze already fixed on me, measuring, comparing. I took my first step down the aisle, and the whispers started. Not the usual appreciative murmurs you hear at weddings. These were different. Pointed. Did she have to pick such a revealing neckline? Meredith's dress was so much more elegant. My father squeezed my arm, but his grip felt mechanical. Even he seemed distracted, his eyes drifting to where Meredith stood among the bridesmaids, radiant in pale blue, her doctor's poise evident even here. Perfect Meredith, who'd never made a wrong choice in her life. Who'd never disappointed anyone. Xavier's face anchored me as I walked. His eyes held nothing but love, steady and sure as a lighthouse beam. He didn't compare me to anyone. He chose me, exactly as I was. The ceremony passed in a blur of traditional words and trembling vows. I barely registered the ring sliding onto my finger, too focused on not crying, on keeping my smile bright and camera ready. Mom would hate it if I ruined my makeup. It wasn't until the reception that everything fell apart. The ballroom glittered with fairy lights and crystal, exactly as I'd imagined. Xavier and I had our first dance, and for those precious minutes, swaying in his arms, I felt weightless. Perfect. Loved. Then my mother stood up to give her speech. "When I look at my daughters," she began, champagne glass glinting, "I see 2 very different paths. Meredith, my firstborn, followed in my footsteps. She understood the value of hard work, of excellence. She became a doctor, saving lives, making a real difference in the world." The room grew quiet. Too quiet. I felt Xavier's hand tighten around mine under the table. "And Stacy?" Mom paused, her smile tightening. "Well, Stacy chose a different path. Her art, her creative pursuits. But today, seeing her finally settling down with Xavier, I'm reminded of something important." My chest constricted. "Don't say it, Mom. Please don't say it." Sometimes the best thing we can do is learn from our siblings' example. Meredith has always been the real daughter I dreamed of having. And now, maybe Stacy will finally understand what that means. The silence shattered into awkward titters. Someone coughed. I felt the blood drain from my face as Xavier's mother gasped audibly. But it was Meredith's expression that broke me. That flash of smug satisfaction before she schooled her features into practiced concern. She knew. She'd always known she was the favorite, the golden child, the real daughter. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. The room spun slightly, champagne and humiliation making me dizzy. Through the blur, I caught sight of an envelope peeking out of Meredith's purse, the one I'd seen her frantically stuffing away this morning. That's when I remembered what I'd found in her room last week while helping her pack for the wedding. The letter that would shatter her perfect image. The proof that St. Meredith wasn't so saintly after all. My fingers itched to grab it, to stand up right there and show everyone the truth about their perfect daughter. But Xavier's steady presence beside me held me back. For now. I smiled, raised my glass, and took a long sip of champagne. Let them laugh. Let them whisper. I had something better than their approval now. I had ammunition. I didn't cry until I reached the bathroom. The marble counter was cool against my palms as I leaned over the sink, willing myself not to ruin my makeup. Even now, Mom's voice echoed in my head. A bride should look perfect in her photos, like Meredith did. The door creaked open. I straightened, ready to paste on another smile, but it was just Layla, my best friend since college. She took one look at me and locked the door behind her. I'm going to kill your mother, she said, pulling me into a hug. And then I'm going to kill Meredith for not stopping her. I laughed wetly against her shoulder. Get in line. You know what? Screw the photos. Layla grabbed a tissue, carefully dabbing under my eyes. Xavier loves you exactly as you are. That's what matters today. But it wasn't. Not really. Because even as she spoke, my mind kept circling back to that envelope in Meredith's purse. The one that could change everything. There's something I haven't told you, I said quietly. Last week, when I was helping Meredith pack, the bathroom door rattled. Stacy? Meredith's voice, honey-sweet with concern. Mom's looking for you. The photographer wants family photos. Of course she does. Layla squeezed my hand. You don't have to go. But I did. Because that's what good daughters do. They smile for photos and pretend everything's fine. Even when their sister is hiding a suspension letter from the medical board for prescribing opioids to her boyfriend on the side. I opened the door. Meredith stood there in her perfect blue dress, her perfect hair, her perfect mask of sisterly concern. Are you okay? Mom didn't mean... Yes, she did. I cut her off, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. She meant every word. Something flickered in Meredith's eyes. Guilt, maybe? Or fear. She touched her purse unconsciously, and I knew she was thinking about the letter. Stacy, please. Can we just get through today without... Without what? Without showing everyone who you really are? She grabbed my arm, fingers digging in. What's that supposed to mean? Ladies! Charlotte appeared around the corner, her smile tight. The photographer's waiting. Stacy, honey, let's fix your makeup first. I let her guide me back into the bathroom, leaving Meredith standing there, uncertainty cracking her perfect facade. Good. Charlotte worked quickly with the makeup brush, her movements precise. I saw what happened out there, she said quietly. With Linda's speech. You mean when she called Meredith her real daughter? The words tasted bitter. Pretty sure everyone saw that. Did you know? Charlotte paused, meeting my eyes in the mirror. That your mother used to be exactly like you? I stared at her. What? Oh, yes. Before medical school, before she met your father, Linda was an artist. Quite talented, actually. But her parents... Charlotte shook her head. They convinced her it wasn't a real career. Sound familiar? The makeup brush stilled. In the harsh bathroom lighting, I could see every line of pain etched around Charlotte's mouth. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand. This isn't about you. It's about her own regrets, her own choices. And Meredith? Charlotte hesitated. Well, let's just say perfect facades usually hide the deepest cracks. My hand went to my bouquet, fingers brushing the roses. You know something about Meredith, don't you? Charlotte's eyes met mine in the mirror again. I know enough to warn you. Revenge might feel sweet, but it usually poisons everyone who tastes it. Before I could respond, the door burst open. Mom stood there, her smile brittle. What's taking so long? The photographer is waiting, I know. I turned to face her. Tell me something, Mom. Do you ever regret giving up art? The color drained from her face. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of Meredith, hovering uncertainly in the hallway. Her purse was clutched tight against her side, protecting her secrets. Mom's voice turned sharp. Don't be ridiculous. I made the right choice, the responsible choice. Like Meredith did? Something dangerous flashed in Mom's eyes. Exactly like Meredith. I smiled then, really smiled, because in that moment I knew exactly what I had to do. The letter in my bedroom drawer, the copy I'd made of Meredith's suspension notice, suddenly felt less like ammunition and more like liberation. "You're right, Mom," I said sweetly. "We should definitely get those family photos done. After all, everyone should see exactly who we really are." I walked past her, past Meredith's suddenly pale face, toward the ballroom where my new husband waited. Behind me, I heard Charlotte sigh softly. Sometimes the responsible choice isn't the right one at all. The key felt heavy in my palm as I stood outside my old bedroom door. 3 days after my wedding, and I was back in my childhood home, heart pounding like I was 16 again, sneaking in past curfew. "You don't have to do this," Xavier whispered behind me. Sweet, honest Xavier, who still believed there might be a peaceful way through this mess. He hadn't grown up with Meredith's perfect shadow stretching across every achievement. I turned the key. The door opened with a familiar creak, and the scent of Mom's lavender air freshener washed over me. My old room, now a guest room that looked nothing like the space I'd grown up in. My art posters replaced with generic landscapes. My easel long gone. But the drawer was still there, bottom right of my old desk, stuck slightly like it always had been. Inside lay the copy I'd made of Meredith's suspension letter, tucked inside an old sketchbook. "I'll keep watch," Xavier said, squeezing my shoulder before stepping into the hallway. My hands shook as I pulled open the drawer. The sketchbook was right where I'd left it, filled with old drawings Mom had called wasteful doodles. I flipped it open to the middle where I'd hidden... empty. The letter was gone. "Looking for something?" I spun around. Meredith stood in the doorway, her face uncharacteristically hard. No trace of her usual perfect smile. "Where is it?" I demanded. "Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out?" She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "The way you looked at my purse at the wedding? How you kept making those little comments about real choices?" My throat felt tight. "You had no right to come in here and..." "No right?" Meredith laughed, but it wasn't her usual melodic sound. This was sharp, almost desperate. "You stole private medical documents from my room, and you've been writing illegal prescriptions." The words burst out of me. Does Mom know her perfect daughter could lose her medical license? "You don't understand anything." Meredith sank onto my old bed, suddenly looking less like the golden child and more like someone drowning. "That letter? It wasn't what you think." "Really? Because it looked pretty clear to me. 3 month suspension pending review. Investigation into improper prescription practices." It was for Dad. The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" Meredith's hands twisted in her lap. "His back pain got worse after the accident last year. The insurance wouldn't cover the medication he needed. I thought I could help." "Dad?" My legs felt weak. I leaned against the desk. "But the boyfriend they mentioned in the letter? A cover story. Dad didn't want anyone to know. Especially Mom." She looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my actual sister instead of my mother's perfect creation. "You know how she gets about appearances." The door opened, and Xavier stepped in, his face grave. "Your mom just pulled up." Panic flashed across Meredith's face. "She can't know. Stacy, please, it would kill her." I should have felt triumphant. This was my chance. My perfect moment to finally show everyone the truth about Meredith. To prove that their perfect daughter was just as flawed as me. But all I could think about was Dad, wincing when he walked me down the aisle, telling me through gritted teeth that he was fine. "We need to talk," I said to Meredith. "Really talk. No more perfect daughter act. No more pretending." She nodded slowly. "Okay, but not here. The studio," I said. "My art studio downtown. Mom would never look for you there." A small smile cracked Meredith's facade. "No, she wouldn't." Xavier's hand found mine as footsteps sounded on the stairs. Mom's voice drifted up, calling Meredith's name. "Tomorrow," I whispered. "Noon." Meredith squeezed past us and hurried toward Mom's voice, her mask of perfection sliding seamlessly back into place. I heard her cheerful greeting, The familiar sound of Mom's doting response. "Are you okay?" Xavier asked quietly. I looked around my old room, at all the traces of me that had been carefully erased. Then I thought about Dad, about Meredith's desperate attempt to help him, about all the ways we try to be perfect for people who can never see us clearly. "No," I said honestly, "but I think I'm starting to understand something." "What's that?" I pulled the empty sketchbook from the drawer, running my fingers over its worn cover. "Sometimes the people who seem most perfect are just better at hiding their scars." We slipped out while Mom and Meredith's voices drifted up from the kitchen. In my pocket, my phone felt heavy with the real copy of the letter, the one I'd kept at home, never trusting my childhood bedroom to keep my secrets. Tomorrow at noon, I'd have to decide what kind of sister I really wanted to be, what kind of daughter, what kind of person. For now, though, I just held Xavier's hand and let him lead me away from the perfect facade of my mother's house, towards something that felt more like truth. My art studio smelled like turpentine and possibility. Sunlight streamed through the industrial windows, catching dust motes in the edges of half-finished canvases. Noon approached, and with each tick of the clock, my stomach twisted tighter. I was touching up a portrait when the door creaked open. Not Meredith. Charlotte. She stood in the doorway, holding a familiar leather-bound journal. "Your mother asked me to drop off some old photos for the wedding album," she said, but her eyes told a different story. "I found something you should see." My brush stilled mid-stroke. "I'm actually waiting for someone." "Meredith isn't coming." Charlotte stepped inside, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. "She called your mother in tears this morning. Something about feeling guilty, about wanting to make things right." The brush clattered onto my palette. "She's going to tell Mom everything?" "No." Charlotte set the journal on my workbench. "She's going to tell your mother what she thinks she wants to hear. That she caught you snooping, that you're trying to ruin her career out of jealousy." My laugh came out sharp and brittle. "Of course she is. Perfect Meredith, always one step ahead." "Before you do anything," Charlotte opened the journal. "Read this. It was your mother's, from medical school." I wanted to refuse, to hold on to my anger, but something in Charlotte's expression made me look down at the faded pages. The handwriting was Mom's, but nothing like her precise script today. This was wild, almost desperate. "Failed another exam. Dad says I'm proving him right. Artists aren't cut out for real work. But I can't fail. Can't let them win. Got pills from Marcus to help me focus. Just until I pass. Just until I'm perfect enough." My hands shook. What is this? Your mother's dirty little secret? Charlotte's voice was gentle. She didn't just give up art. She nearly destroyed herself trying to become what her parents wanted. But she succeeded. She became the perfect doctor, the perfect mother. No, honey, she became perfect at pretending. Charlotte touched my arm. Just like Meredith. The door opened again. This time it was Meredith, her eyes red-rimmed, her perfect posture cracking at the edges. "I'm sorry I'm late," she said. "I went to see Dad first." Charlotte squeezed my shoulder. "I'll leave you two to talk." After she left, silence stretched between us like a tightrope. Meredith wandered the studio, stopping at my latest painting. A woman screaming in silent rage, her face obscured by a perfect mask. "This is really good," she said quietly. "Don't." "No, I mean it." She turned to face me. "I always envied this about you." I barked out a laugh. "You? Envied me?" "You were brave enough to choose what you loved." Her fingers traced the mask in the painting. "I chose what would make Mom happy. What would make up for..." She glanced at the journal on my workbench. "You knew? About Mom?" "Charlotte told me last year when I started writing those prescriptions for Dad." Meredith's smile was bitter. "Guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree." I sank onto my paint-splattered stool. "Why didn't you tell me? About any of it?" "Same reason you never told me how much Mom's favoritism hurt you. We were too busy playing our parts." She met my eyes. "I am sorry about this morning. I panicked." "You threw me under the bus." I know, She gestured helplessly. It's what perfect daughters do, right? Protect the family image? I looked down at Mom's journal, at the desperate words of a young woman trying to be someone else's version of perfect. Then at my sister, cracking under the same pressure. What if we stopped? I said suddenly. All of it. The perfect daughter act, the rivalry, the secrets. Mom would never— I'm not talking about Mom. I stood up, grabbed a blank canvas. I'm talking about us. Look at what this perfectionism did to her. What it's doing to you. To Dad. Meredith's breath caught. He's getting worse. The pain. Then we deal with it. Together. For real. I picked up my brush again. No more masks? She was quiet for a long moment, watching me prep the canvas. Finally, she said, Mom's having dinner at my house tonight to discuss your concerning behavior. I dipped my brush in red paint. Perfect. Let's give her something real to discuss. Stacy. Meredith's voice wavered. If we do this, if we tell her everything, it's going to break her. I thought about Mom's journal, about Dad's pain, about all the perfect lies slowly poisoning our family. Maybe, I said, making the first bold stroke across the canvas. Some things need to break before they can heal. Meredith picked up another brush, held it like she used to when we were kids, sharing my art supplies. Show me what to do. Outside, church bells struck noon, marking the moment when two sisters chose truth over perfection. The real question was, could our family survive it? Meredith's dining room looked like a magazine spread. Crystal glasses catching the chandelier light, fresh flowers perfectly arranged. Mom would approve, until we ruined everything. Stop fidgeting, Meredith whispered, adjusting the table settings for the third time. Her hands shook slightly, betraying her own nerves. Sorry, just imagining Mom's face when— The doorbell rang. We both jumped. But it wasn't Mom. It was Dad, leaning heavily on his cane, face tight with pain he thought he was hiding. My girls, he said, attempting his usual warm smile. Both of you here for dinner? That's a nice surprise. Meredith and I exchanged glances. He didn't know we knew about the prescriptions. About any of it. Daddy, Meredith started, but the doorbell rang again. This time it was Mom, breezing in with a bottle of wine and concern etched across her perfect features. Meredith, darling. Oh. Her smile faltered when she saw me. Stacy, I didn't realize you'd be joining us. Wouldn't miss it. I took the wine from her, our fingers brushing. She pulled back like my touch burned. Dinner started as a masterclass in avoidance. Mom praised Meredith's cooking. Dad pushed food around his plate, and I watched him struggle to grip his fork properly. Finally, during a lull in the forced conversation, I said, Dad, how's your back? His fork clattered against the plate. Mom frowned. Richard's fine. Aren't you, dear? Actually, Meredith set down her glass with shaking hands. He's not. The silence that followed felt like glass about to shatter. Meredith, Dad warned, but she continued. He's been in constant pain since the accident. Pain that his insurance won't cover treatment for. Her voice grew stronger. Pain that I've been helping him manage. Mom's face went blank, her tell for rising anger. What exactly are you saying? I pulled out the suspension letter, placed it on the table between us. She's saying she wrote prescriptions for Dad and got caught. No. Mom shook her head. No, Meredith would never— I did. Meredith's voice cracked. I did it because he needed help, and nobody was listening, and I couldn't stand watching him suffer anymore. Richard? Mom turned to Dad, desperate for denial. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Linda, please. How could you? She stood so abruptly her chair scraped the floor. Do you have any idea what this could do to her career? To our reputation? Our reputation? I laughed, harsh and hollow. Dad's in pain. Meredith could lose her license, and you're worried about appearances? You don't understand. No, Mom, you don't understand. I pulled out the journal Charlotte had given me. But maybe this will help. All the color drained from her face. Where did you get that? Does it matter? What matters is that you've spent years pushing us to be perfect, when you know exactly what that pressure does to someone. That's different. How? Meredith stood too, her perfect posture finally breaking. How is it different? You nearly destroyed yourself trying to be perfect for your parents, and now you're doing the same thing to us. I was protecting you. No. Dad's quiet voice cut through the tension. You were protecting yourself, Linda. From your own fears, your own regrets. Mom sank back into her chair, looking suddenly old, vulnerable, human. She touched the journal with trembling fingers. I wanted you to have everything I couldn't, to be stronger than I was. Mom, I moved to kneel beside her chair. We don't need you to make us perfect. We need you to love us as we are. A tear slipped down her cheek. Then another. Richard, she turned to Dad. Why didn't you tell me you were in so much pain? Because, he smiled sadly, I was trying to be perfect too. The sound that escaped Mom's throat was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. What a mess we've made. Maybe, Meredith said softly. That's okay. Maybe we can be a mess together. The doorbell rang again, startling us all. Through the frosted glass, I recognized Xavier's silhouette. He wasn't supposed to be here. Wasn't part of this plan. When Meredith opened the door, his face was grave. Sorry to interrupt, but Stacy needs to see this. He held out his phone, open to a medical board webpage. They're launching a full investigation into the prescription irregularities. They're looking at everyone in Meredith's department. My sister's sharp intake of breath made us all turn. There's more, Xavier said quietly. They found something else. Something about Mom's old medical practice. Mom went very still. What about my practice? And that's when I realized we weren't just uncovering old family secrets. We were standing at the edge of an avalanche, and it was too late to stop it from falling. The medical board's website glowed accusingly on Xavier's phone. Mom's hands trembled as she read, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the screen. This is impossible, she whispered. Those records were sealed. What records? Meredith asked. But I already knew. The pieces were clicking together. Charlotte's warnings, the old journal, Mom's obsession with perfection. You did the same thing, I said quietly. Didn't you? Writing prescriptions you shouldn't have? Mom set the phone down like it might explode. It was different then. I was trying to help students stay focused, stay perfect. Like you did in medical school? The words tasted bitter. With the pills from Marcus, Dad's sharp intake of breath cut through the room. Linda? It was 25 years ago. Mom's voice rose, brittle as glass. I was young, desperate. The board agreed to seal the records if I took a leave of absence, got help. And now they're reopening everything, Xavier said, because of the current investigation. Meredith sank into her chair. Because of what I did for Dad, no. I stood up so fast my head spun. Because of what this family's obsession with perfection has done to all of us. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Charlotte, her face drawn with worry. I came as soon as I heard. Linda, they're calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. You knew. I turned to her. You knew about Mom's past when you gave me that journal. Charlotte met my gaze steadily. I was there. I was the one who reported her back then, and I was the one who helped her get help. You reported me? Mom's voice cracked. I thought Marcus was supplying half the medical students with amphetamines, Charlotte said quietly. I reported him too, but I made sure your records were sealed, Linda. I protected you. Some protection. Meredith laughed hollowly. They're still going to find everything. Not if we get ahead of it, Charlotte said. Not if we control the narrative. Mom's perfect posture crumpled. What are you suggesting? Tell the truth. All of it. Show them you've learned. That you understand the pressure you were under then, the same pressure your daughter was under when she tried to help her father. It would ruin us, Mom whispered. No, I moved to stand between them. It would free us. Xavier touched my arm. Stacy, think about what you're asking. This could affect everyone's careers, your family's reputation. Good. The word came out sharp, surprising even me. Maybe then we can stop pretending. Stop forcing ourselves into these perfect little boxes that are slowly killing us. Stacy's right. Dad's voice was stronger than I'd heard in months. I'm tired of pretending I'm not in pain. Tired of watching my daughters tear themselves apart trying to meet impossible standards. Mom looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Richard? Remember when Stacy won her first art competition? He continued. She was so proud, Linda. Until you asked why she couldn't focus that dedication on something worthwhile instead. I was trying to protect her. From what? I demanded. From being happy? From being herself? From ending up like me, Mom shouted, then pressed her hands to her mouth like she could take the words back. The silence that followed felt like a living thing, heavy with decades of unspoken truth. Charlotte cleared her throat. The board meets at 9 tomorrow morning. Whatever you decide to do, it needs to be unanimous. They'll look for any crack in your story. Our story, Meredith corrected quietly. The true one. Mom looked around the room. At Dad's pain-lined face, at Meredith's trembling hands, at my defiant stance. Finally, at Charlotte, her oldest friend who'd both exposed and protected her darkest secret. If we do this, she said slowly, there's no going back. No more perfect family, perfect careers, perfect anything. Maybe. I took her hand, felt it shake in mine. That's exactly what we need. The doorbell rang one final time. Through the glass, I saw a man in a suit. Someone from the medical board, no doubt starting their investigation early. Mom squared her shoulders, that familiar mask of perfection starting to slide into place. But I squeezed her hand hard, keeping her with us in this moment of raw truth. Together, I said. We do this together. She looked at me then, really looked at me. Maybe for the first time since I'd chosen art over medicine. When did you get so strong? I've always been strong, Mom. You just couldn't see it through all the expectations. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Well, Mom took a deep breath, her hand steadying in mine. Shall we show them what a real family looks like? We moved toward the door as one. Imperfect, scarred, but finally real. The medical board's conference room felt like a courtroom, all polished wood and judgmental silence. Early morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the faces of the 7 board members seated before us. Mom sat between Meredith and me, her spine straight but her hands twisted in her lap. Gone was her usual perfect armor. No designer suit, no carefully crafted image. Just a woman in a simple blue dress, finally ready to tell the truth. Dr. Emerson, the board chairman began, we've uncovered some disturbing patterns in your daughter's prescription history. Yes. Mom's voice wavered slightly. And if you'll allow me, I'd like to provide some context. I watched her pull out the old journal, its leather cover worn smooth by time and secrets. My throat tightened as she opened it, revealing those desperate words from decades ago. 25 years ago, I sat before a different board, she began. They showed mercy then, sealed my records, but I didn't learn the right lesson from that mercy. The chairman leaned forward. Explain. I learned to hide better, to push perfection harder. Mom's voice strengthened. I taught my daughters the same toxic lesson, that nothing matters more than maintaining the perfect image. Meredith reached for my hand under the table. I squeezed back, feeling her pulse race against my palm. My youngest daughter, Stacy. Mom gestured to me. She tried to tell me, through her art, her choices, her refusal to fit the mold I created. But I couldn't hear her. This is all very touching, one board member interrupted. But it doesn't excuse Dr. Williams's illegal prescriptions. No, Meredith spoke up, her voice clear despite her trembling hands. It doesn't excuse them, but it explains them. I watched my father suffer, unable to get the pain medication he needed through proper channels. I made a choice, the wrong choice, but one born from the same desperate need to fix everything that drove my mother years ago. The chairman's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting this is a generational pattern? I'm suggesting it's a systemic problem, I found myself saying. One that forces doctors to choose between helping patients and following rules that sometimes hurt more than heal. Ms. Williams, another board member sighed, you're not a medical professional. No, I'm an artist, which means I see things differently. I pulled out my sketchbook, opened to the portrait I'd drawn last night. Mom in her medical school days, half her face a perfect mask, the other half cracking to reveal raw humanity beneath. Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to recognize patterns. The room fell silent as the sketch made its way around the table. I watched their faces shift from dismissal to something closer to understanding. What exactly are you asking for? The chairman finally asked. Mom straightened. Not mercy this time. Truth. Accountability. For all of it, my past, my daughter's choices, the broken system that created both situations. And in return? In return, Charlotte stepped forward from where she'd been quietly observing. I propose a committee to review and revise prescription protocols, particularly for chronic pain patients. With both Dr. Emerson serving as consultants, sharing their unique perspectives on how pressure and inadequate options can lead to desperate choices. The board members exchanged glances. The chairman's lips pressed into a thin line. You understand, he said slowly. This would mean public disclosure of your sealed records. Yes. Mom's voice didn't waver. And a suspension for Dr. Williams, pending completion of ethics training and community service. I understand. Meredith nodded. And your reputation? Your practice? Mom reached for my hand, completing the circle between the three of us. My reputation was built on lies. I'm ready to build something new. Something real. The chairman sat back, studying us. We'll need time to deliberate. As we filed out into the hallway, Dad was waiting, leaning on his cane. How did it go? Before anyone could answer, Mom turned to him. I'm so sorry, Richard, for not seeing your pain, for not seeing any of it. He pulled her close, and for the first time in my memory, she let herself be held without worrying how it looked. Stacy? Meredith touched my arm. That portrait you showed them, would you consider doing one of me? The real me? I smiled, feeling something shift and settle in my chest. Only if you'll sit still and let yourself be imperfect. The boardroom door opened. The chairman's face was unreadable as he gestured us back in. Mom straightened, but this time not into her perfect posture. This time she stood like herself, flawed, human, real. Whatever they decide, she whispered. We face it together. We walked back in. 3 generations of women finally ready to shatter the perfect mirrors we'd been hiding behind. Sometimes I realized the bravest thing isn't maintaining the facade. It's letting it fall. The gallery lights cast soft shadows across my newest collection. 12 portraits of perfectly imperfect people. At the center hung the piece that started it all. My mother, half masked, half free. Beside it, Meredith's portrait showed her in her doctor's coat, prescription pad torn in half, face turned toward a rising sun. They're going to hate it, Mom said quietly, standing beside me. She wasn't wearing makeup tonight. A small rebellion, but one that made her look younger somehow. More alive. Maybe. I adjusted a frame slightly. Or maybe they'll see themselves in it. The medical board's decision had been better than we'd hoped, but harder too. Mom and Meredith would both work under supervision for a year, helping develop new protocols for chronic pain management. Dad had started physical therapy with a pain specialist who actually listened. And I had started painting the truth. The gallery doors opened early, letting in Charlotte and an unfamiliar woman with silver hair. Stacy, Charlotte called. There's someone you should meet. The woman stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Mom's portrait. I remember when Linda looked exactly like that. So desperate to be perfect, she almost disappeared completely. Mom's breath caught. Professor Martinez? Hello, Linda. The woman's smile was gentle. Charlotte told me about everything. I had to come see for myself. I don't understand. I looked between them. Who? Diana Martinez. Mom's voice shook slightly. My art professor, before I switched to pre-med. The one who tried to convince me to stay true to myself. The one who saw through your mask, Professor Martinez corrected. Just like your daughter does. More guests started arriving, the gallery filling with murmurs and clicking heels. I spotted Meredith in her new volunteer clinic uniform, Xavier proudly showing Dad the portrait I'd done of him, strength evident in his vulnerability. Look. Mom touched my arm, pointing to a young medical student standing before her portrait, crying quietly. Before I could respond, the gallery director clinked her glass for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the artist, Stacy Williams. The spotlight found me, warm and expectant. Mom squeezed my hand once, then let go. I stepped forward, facing the crowd. This collection is called Perfect Mirrors, but it's not about perfection. It's about what happens when we shatter the mirrors we hide behind. My eyes found each family member as I continued. It's about a doctor who prescribed pills to help students be perfect until she became trapped in that perfection herself. About her daughter who followed the same path until pain, her father's pain, forced her to choose between rules and humanity. Meredith smiled through tears, Dad's arm around her shoulders. It's about the masks we wear, the lies we tell ourselves, and what happens when we're brave enough to let them fall. I gestured to the portraits surrounding us. Each person here has their own story of breaking free from perfection, of choosing truth over appearance, healing over hiding. Professor Martinez stepped forward. And what about your story, Stacy? What mirror did you break? I turned to the final portrait, still veiled. With steady hands, I pulled away the covering. Gasps rippled through the crowd. There I stood on canvas in my wedding dress, ripping off a smiling mask to reveal not pain or anger underneath, but joy. Pure, unfiltered joy. I broke the mirror that told me I had to choose between being good and being myself, I said. The one that said revenge was better than redemption. Mom made a small sound beside me. When I turned, she was looking at my self-portrait with new eyes. I never saw it before, she whispered. How much it hurt you, trying to be what I wanted instead of who you were. Mom, no, let me finish. She straightened, addressing the crowd, but speaking to me. My daughter taught me that real strength isn't in being perfect. It's in being true. And I've never been prouder of her than I am right now. The applause that followed felt like redemption, like rain after drought. But it was the quiet moment after, when Mom picked up a brush from my nearby easel and added her signature to the corner of her portrait, that truly healed something in me. There, she said softly. Now it's complete. Professor Martinez smiled. No, Linda, now it's beginning. I looked around the gallery, at my family's shattered mirrors and healing hearts, at strangers finding their own reflections in our broken pieces, and finally understood. Sometimes the most beautiful art comes from the shards of what we thought we had to be. And sometimes, perfect isn't the opposite of flawed. It's the courage to be both.